an amazing feat. And I'd also like to mention that Dr. Wilson is part of our CHARM team. And my name is Marsha Wills-Karp. I'm the chair of the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering at the Bloomberg School of Public Health. And I'm also the director of the CHARM Center. So what is CHARMed? Are they seeing our slides?
No.
No.
Well, I'm not, but I don't know if maybe the room they are.
Are you? No? I don't know if the IT people are still here because they're supposed to run the slides.
Would it be easier if I have everyone email me the slides? Is there a way to like, can they hear us if we talk? Are we muted? Will you unmute me?
Let's see. Can somebody message them? It's fine for me not to have my slide, but the rest of the speakers will need
Am I doing that or are you doing that? You're doing that. Okay.
their slides.
Yeah, because I think, okay. So since I'm in the room. Okay, this is Katie. I don't know if you guys can hear. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I'm realizing that the computer down here, if you guys will email me all the presenters your slides, I can make sure that they get shared and we can walk through them. I'm realizing that I think there's a sharing screen share issue. So
We did email them to you yesterday.
Not to me, no. I only have, if you would, Lauren, Kyle, and Sarah, would you email me your slides and then I can make sure that they can share it appropriately.
Okay. All
Could
right.
you give us your email address, please?
Yeah, it's is there a chat I can put it in?
Yeah.
Okay. Be easier.
Can I bring this over then?
Hey, Katie,
Yeah.
is it possible for us to see who's in the room?
I don't know.
That's okay.
Oh, I see. It's over there. Yeah.
Okay, and it says it's to a private person.
Oh, yeah. That is only to Kyle.
I'm not sure there is anybody there,
There
but
are a few people. There's like 5 or 6 of us. Okay.
okay.
And just to clarify, there's not any way to enable the screen sharing capacity for the Zoom?
Screen sharing, yes, I
Yeah.
can do that.
Oh, so you might be good. You might not need to email them to me. After all that, sorry.
Oh, that's perfect.
Wait, so who do I have to?
Okay.
email to?
You can see us, but hopefully you'll be able to see the slides when you get them. Okay. So I'm just going to keep moving and hopefully we'll have the slides by the time I'm finished doing the introduction here. It's short. So many of you are probably wondering what is CHARMed. CHARMed is a program sponsored by the National Institute of Environmental Health, and its goal is to work with community partners from Southern Pennsylvania, Baltimore, and DC to identify environmental concerns and assist communities with addressing these issues to improve public health. One of the mechanisms for achieving this goal is to fund pilot projects to support community and academic partnerships and to address particular community concerns. Another goal is to train young scientists in doing community engaged work and more effectively working with communities. So today we have a fabulous lineup of junior investigators who are going to share with you the progress they've made on their CHARMed community pilot projects. And we hope that you will get inspired by hearing these and contact any member of our team about submitting a community engaged pilot. So are we ready with slides? Can I introduce Sarah?
Sarah, do you have your slides ready?
I just sent them. I could also try to do a quick slide share. Let
You
me
want to
see.
try that? If it doesn't work,
Can
I
I
can
can I ask? Is this session being recorded? Maybe that would be a good idea to
It
put
is.
on the
There's a thumbs
CHARMed
up over here.
website.
It's being recorded, Anna.
Some part of it, probably not this first 10 minutes. All right, perfect. So Sarah, can you put on the slide presentation mode, or I'm not sure if you have control.
He's trying. There you go. Perfect.
All right. So pleased to have Dr. Sarah Leupold with us to present. She's assistant scientist in the Bloomberg School of Public Health in the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering. So please, Sarah, introduce yourself and inform us on your progress on your community pilot.
Great. Thank you, Marcia. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here today to give a status update on our pilot project this far. Our project is intended to serve an environmental justice community in Southern Delaware County, Pennsylvania. And the name of our project is Assessing Strengths, Stressors, and Environmental Justice in Southeastern Pennsylvania Communities, which we lovingly call Assess PA. And I just want to note that I'm the one presenting here today, but I really do have a rock star team of community residents, advocates, students, and faculty at Hopkins who are working on this with me. And some of them are probably actually better positioned to speak about this work, but it's an honor to be here presenting our work for them. And so first off, I actually want to start with the thank yous. So thank you to the Charm Center for funding this work. And also I want to give a thank you to Andrea Chigger, a PhD candidate in the department, for helping me create a lot of these slides that you'll see here today. Oops. And I also want to just raise up right away the community partners who are working with us on this project, the Clean Air Council, Marcus Hook Neighbors for Public Health, the Energy Justice Network, and Delco Environmental Justice. So we're really excited about the network that we have working with us on this project. And then to start off, I kind of just want to paint a picture and actually show you some pictures of the community this pilot project serves. So to start off, the study area, as I mentioned, is located in Southern Delaware County in Pennsylvania. Oops, my slides are auto-adjusting. And this community is subject to a diverse and devastating mixture of toxic chemical exposures due to the disproportionate concentration of industrial and petrochemical facilities just within this approximately 10 square mile study area, which you see on the map. It includes about a dozen municipalities running from Eddystone in the northeast all the way to Marcus Hook in the southwest. And I just want to point out a few key features on the map. So the purple areas on the site are manufacturing sites. The pink stripes are RCRA action sites, and the orange shading shows sites that are national priority sites under the Superfund program. So within this study area, you will literally find almost every type of industry, everything from oil refineries to gas-fired power plants. There's a station for the CSX rail cars, a compressor station, a sewage treatment plant and sludge incinerator, a trash incinerator, a paper mill, 2 different coal-fired power plants, and actually there's ongoing conversations and a permitting process underway to build a new LNG processing facility within this community as well. And so highly, huge concentration of industry. I hope I made that point. And obviously emitting a lot of toxic chemicals. Just wanted to actually show you these pictures to show you that amidst all of this industry, there really are people living here, literally on the fence line. And it's really difficult to be in this community without seeing a source of toxic emissions in view. And in addition to the chemical and environmental stressors this community is facing, this community also has numerous non-chemical stressors. So this area has a high social vulnerability index, according to the CDC, which is driven primarily by low socioeconomic status, a high percentage of Black residents, and poor housing conditions. And so together, these environmental burdens and socio-demographic vulnerabilities are really make this community a textbook example of environmental justice. And actually, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection just released a new tool for identifying environmental justice communities, and this community ranks among one of the most disadvantaged in the state as well. So, but relying on federal sources or higher state level sources of data, we've realized doesn't really tell us a lot about what's actually going on locally. So the CDC Places program estimated that rates of children's asthma in this community are about 13%, just slightly above the national average of 10%. But a local survey that had been conducted by some community members and community groups in 2018 estimated that the prevalence in the community was closer to 27%. So this really underscores the community's desire for more localized data. And that really kind of brings us to the goal of this study, of this pilot project. So the goal of this project is to improve our understanding of this community's strengths, stressors, and needs, which we're doing through a community health, environmental health survey, and also through targeted focus groups. And then with this information, the goal is to empower community research and advocacy and support the community in involving and taking action with policymakers. And so our group has very passionately embraced a full community-based participatory research approach, or CBPR, in which the community residents and academic co-investigators are treated as equals throughout all phases of the project, including having community residents being listed on the Hopkins IRB protocols, completing human subjects research training. Our goal is really to build capacity and embrace co-learning across our team. And so this is kind of what you see on the screen, kind of a model of what our process is and where we're headed, and the arrows in green show the work that we've completed so far. So we've established our relationship and our research goals and have designed our survey, and now we're in the process of conducting outreach and recruiting community residents to complete the survey. And so the focus of the survey, we're actually really proud of this. The survey focus is cumulative impacts and community priorities. So many of us are probably very familiar with cumulative impacts, but for those of us that aren't, it's defined as the totality of exposures to combinations of both chemical and non-chemical stressors, and the impacts on well-being and quality of life. And so our survey is designed to collect information on both chemical and non-chemical stressors at both the individual and community level. And this survey we really designed based on the lived experience of our co-investigators. Whenever possible, we did try to use questions that were derived from validated sources whenever possible. So this will allow us to compare our results to national estimates. For example, validated questions and tools for assessing mental health status or food insecurity. Whenever possible, we use the set of questions that resonated most with our co-investigators. And so ultimately, the survey takes about 15 to 25 minutes to complete, and any community resident who completes the survey receives a $10 gift card. And we're using REDCap as our platform for data collection. One of the key reasons is our ability to actually send the gift cards remotely without even having to be in contact, which was really important for our team in protecting participant confidentiality and anonymity. And any resident, I should say, any resident who's greater than 18 years of age and lives in the study area is eligible to complete the survey. And I am super happy to report that we do have some preliminary results from our survey so far. So we launched about maybe a month and a half ago, and so far we have 130 respondents. The average age of survey respondents is about 44 years of age, and the average residence or time of residence in the study area is about 30 years. Among all of the boroughs or municipalities participating, we have most of our respondents so far coming from Traynor and Marcus Hook and Chester and Lower Chichester, but we do have a strategy, where we're trying to round that out and get a broader sampling from the whole study area. So far, most of our participants are white, followed next by Black participants. And overwhelmingly, our participants so far have been female, which we're learning is pretty typical for a lot of this sort of work. So we plan to continue recruiting until at least probably the end of October, and our target number of respondents is about 200 to maybe 250 respondents, depending on how outreach goes. So while we're really excited about all of the work that we've done so far and getting responses, we have had some challenges that we just want to kind of acknowledge and share for those among you who are doing this work. So it has been tricky to navigate some of the complex community and interpersonal histories and relationships that we walked into and that our co-investigators have lived. It's complex and it takes time and energy, but it's so important and so valuable. We also found that navigating the IRB requirements at JHU was a little bit time consuming and sometimes unclear. So we had a little bit of a delay in actually launching the survey, but ultimately, we're really pleased with the results, and we have our co-investigators, actively, registered with our IRB, and they've received extra training as well. And then also, in an attempt to balance easy access for community residents and anonymity, we made ourselves a little bit vulnerable in launching this survey to advances in artificial intelligence and bots. So several times after we launched the survey, our survey was compromised by automatic bots who would bombard our survey links and attempt to give us bogus information and to gain access to a gift card. We've also encountered some individual scammers, people that we know are humans who clearly don't reside in the study area, but are trying to respond to the survey. So we have spent a large portion of the last few months building defenses against these threats to protect the integrity of our survey. Andrea Chigger is really the expert on this, but we have implemented CAPTCHAs and local knowledge questions that only community residents should be able to answer, like what is the river closest to your home? We've also tested questions that should only be visible to bots. So if they would be answered, we would know it was a bot. And we've also introduced questions that are only answerable by humans. And we've had kind of mixed results. I think probably the most helpful tactic that we've had has been the open text responses in the survey, where participants can just, kind of talk about their concerns, and they've been the most informative in terms of differentiating humans and bots. And so the word cloud on the left is actually some responses that we got from the first attack, and the word cloud on the right is is a word cloud from the second attack. So the key takeaway there is that bots are quite quick and they learn very fast. So ultimately, even with all of these new strategies, we feel like we kind of have protected the integrity of the survey, and we've also pivoted our outreach strategies a bit to not post so publicly on social media and instead to focus on in-person and direct engagement. We also are piloting the use of specific unique passwords tied to specific community residents who are doing outreach, and also community events. So if, for example, a password at one event or for one team member is compromised, we can deactivate it and activate a new one, and all of the other passwords can still collect data. So we've learned a lot. We feel like we've really kind of hit our stride and are actually really excited about our next steps. So for that, we're just continuing to do outreach and building relationships within the community and with our co-investigators. We're also right now in the process of starting to schedule focus groups. And these focus groups are designed to probe deeper about the physical and mental health impacts of residents. And then once we have completed data collection on the survey and the focus groups, we'll be disseminating these results to the community. TBD on the best way to do that. We'll really be looking to our co-investigators to guide us on that. And then with that data, it's really going to be up to the community with what we do. But the goal is to collaborate with residents to develop policy recommendations and to figure out how the community wants to engage policymakers to address those concerns. So with that, I will stop sharing and turn it over to the next person. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. That was Excellent presentation, and hopefully we'll have time at the end to ask you a little bit more about some of the unique challenges that you face. So congratulations. We're excited to see what comes next in your study. So next is Katie Kurowski. She's a PhD candidate in the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering at the Bloomberg School of Public Health. So Katie, I understand you are there in person.
Yes, I'm just trying to log into Zoom, I think, to join.
Okay.
us. What's the meeting ID?
Mm.
The meeting ID?
It's there.
Okay, perfect. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
You're good.
Sorry, everybody in the room. Technology. Passcode.
Yes. Can't live without it and can't live with it some days, right?
Okay,
Yeah,
so I'm gonna join without audio.
okay.
Is that okay?
I think that'd be fine. Because it'll pick up on the
Yeah,
microphone.
I think that will make it easier. So it also doesn't. Okay, sorry. Give me 1 second. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Thanks everybody for coming today. My name is Katie. I'm a doctoral. Ooh, some feedback. Sorry about that. This way. Okay, sorry about that. I'm a doctoral candidate in the Johns Hopkins University's Bloomberg School of Public Health and the Environmental Health and Engineering Department. And today I'm going to be talking about a pilot project I've been a part of called the Regional Air Monitoring Poultry Emissions in Delmarva Study, RAMPed for short, funded by the CHARM Center. So first and foremost, I want to thank our community partners, Maria and Michael Payan, who are both here today, but not in the audience. They're, I think, at another session. They are part of the Sussex Health and Environment Network, SHEN, as well as the Sussex Sentinels of Eastern Shore Health, SESH. And without them, this work would not be possible. They are basically the backbone of this project. Additionally, I just wanted to give a thank you to my 2 advisors and the co-PIs on this project, Drs. Anna Rule and Chris Heaney. And additionally, a few other people at Johns Hopkins, Deanne Williams, who's actually in the audience today. Hi, Dee. And Chris Pfizer, who wasn't able to join us today, but he is the logistical hero of this project. It also would not happen without him. So just kind of set the stage a little bit and kind of orient us to where we are. This is a map of the Eastern Shore, also known as the Delmarva Peninsula, in yellow. And it's comprised of Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. And a lot of times when you think of Delmarva or the Eastern Shore, you think of beautiful beaches. These are pictures from Ocean City. You think of summer, you think of tourism. But additionally, if you go inland, you're also bombarded with poultry. So this picture actually is a picture of a poultry truck heading to one of the processing plants that I took while we were doing some mobile monitoring. So there is poultry everywhere in this area. So kind of what is the impact of this poultry? There are 300 million birds, chickens alone in this area that are raised and sold. And that was in 2017, but that number stays consistent and could be increasing. So with all of these millions of chickens comes lots of waste. And what do we do with this waste? A lot of times it's applied to land. So 90% of that poultry litter is applied to land, but doesn't just stay on the land. Additionally, you need to house all these birds and all these chickens. So there are 6,000 plus barns as well as other infrastructure, and that infrastructure relates to processing plants, trucks that are moving them, biogas facilities. There's a lot more than just a poultry barn and a chicken. One of the major concerns with this industry is air pollution for the neighbors and the communities that live around these facilities, particularly with gases, the health, malodor, and climate gases that are on the screen, hydrogen sulfide, methane, ammonia, and carbon dioxide, as well as particulate matter. One thing to note, there is not a lot of regional air monitoring in this area in terms of like a federal EPA monitor or local or state. So kind of our goal with this was to help set up a local network so we kind of get a sense of what's going on in this region. So the environment's important, but what about the health? So there are a lot of health effects that have been kind of studied and investigated in relation to poultry exposure. And a lot of those include increased risk of human-acquired pneumonia, reduced gestation time for pregnant people, reduced birth weight, asthma exacerbations. There's actually not as many studies on the poultry industry as compared to like the swine industry or the cattle industry. So it's kind of a research gap that needs to be addressed. Additionally, and kind of most importantly, this is an issue of environmental justice, which is why we're here today, on the Eastern Shore. So these poultry CAFOs are more often located in counties with some of the lowest wealth in the state. both Delaware and Maryland. And this industry disproportionately impacts communities of color and low-income communities. Okay, so that kind of sets the stage for the project that I'm presenting on today, the pilot project. So these were our kind of main goals that we were interested in assessing with our pilot, kind of to build capacity, characterize the air pollution, and then set up this local network. And to achieve that, we kind of have three specific aims that we were hoping to work through. So I'm going to read them a little bit so I don't butcher them because they're a mouthful. But we are going to hopefully quantify community air pollution attributable to poultry CAFOs and related biofuel infrastructure. And this kind of gets actually at all three aims: setting up this local network, characterizing the air pollutants, as well as working with our community partners for community science aspects. Secondly, we want to quantify the surface contamination with these poultry-specific microbial source tracking markers, which are basically fecal signatures from chickens that we can detect in dust, and that would signify that that waste and that dust came from a poultry operation. And lastly, we want to be able to disseminate these findings to the community members and support ongoing and future legal policy, different types of actions, and making sure that our research is actually beneficial to those who are helping with it. Okay, so for the sake of time today, I'm going to focus mostly on our first aim, which is the air pollution. And we're talking just a little bit about how are we doing it. We have two kind of ways we're working to quantify this air pollution. We have a mobile gas portion of it, as well as a stationary particulate matter portion. So for the mobile gas portion, we're looking at methane, hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, and carbon dioxide with these instruments called Picaro gas analyzers. They're pictured here. I realize people on Zoom cannot see it, but I'm pointing at the bottom picture of the car, and you can see the gray box with the green. That is the Picaro itself. And there is a tube running out the back of it, out the window of the car, and that is sampling gas every second as we're driving. It's powered by this big, bulky glamping battery, if you will, and the air pump that are pictured right to the left of the air monitor. So while we're driving, we are also running the Strava app. I'm not sure how many of you guys are runners, but we actually use the Strava app because as you move, it tracks your geo coordinates as well as your time. So you're able to link your gas and your location by a timestamp, and that kind of can help you create these maps or time series of what's going on at a given time. Also, thanks, Anna, the pictures, us and our community partners on a mobile monitoring run, I believe in April. So we kind of all switched in the car and decided why not all go together this time. We also have stationary monitors set up, and that is this bottom right picture of it's called a QuantEQ modulaire. And it's very similar to Purple Air, except it's a little bit better with PM10. So we're looking at PM10, PM2.5, total suspended particles. And these modulaires are solar panels. You can see the solar powered. You can see the solar panel in the picture. And they also have a sonic anemometer that is measuring wind speed and wind direction, which is helpful for not only those measurements, but also for our mobile gas measurements, because we're going in the area where our stationary units are. So our goal is to set up 5 of those. Mike and Maria have been instrumental in that because that would not happen without them. They've been the ones going out to the community, hearing community concerns, talking with people who could potentially host them, recruiting these hosts, consenting them, and even setting them up. So that portion of this project is heavily reliant on them and would not happen without them. With these monitors, we're also hoping to use trail cameras to capture what is going on in the area, whether that's like a truck driving by and stirring up dust or a poultry barn being cleaned out. And so you can kind of look at your time series of your particulate matter and understand, oh, I see a spike here. What was that due to? And we're hoping to see patterns related to the poultry industry. Okay. So kind of a progress update. Progress has been slow moving. I will say that, pilot projects. We just had some logistical issues, some technical issues, admin issues. So we're just kind of moving through that slowly. But this is, again, a map of Delmarva. And in the green box on the map on the left, you can see that's kind of like our general study area. And then when we zoom in, you can see that the blue dots are our modular units that we've already set up. We've actually been lucky enough to work with a few other institutions on the Eastern Shore who have created this Delmarva harms map. And basically it's community identified plumes of ammonia, community identified sources of concern. So the red boxes actually represent plumes that the community identified as either malodorous or potential ammonia plumes that they're concerned about. And so we were able to actually put monitors in that location and also do mobile monitoring around those. So just quickly by the numbers, we've got 4 of our 5 modular units installed at participant homes. I believe our 5th is on the way. We're just kind of finalizing who's going to have it. I'm not going to talk so much about the swabs, but we have collected 75 swabs and processed them, and they're ready for analysis. We've completed 2 mobile monitoring trips, one in the winter and one in the summer. Sorry, one in the spring and one in the summer. And in these trips, it's been about 6 laps around different facilities or around a route that we created for these facilities of interest. So 12 total. Okay, and then just briefly, because I know I'm kind of short on time, just want to give you an example of kind of a readout from our most recent trip. So just to orient you guys, the x-axis is time, and this is actually in it's 10:45 a.m. So that way it's just a portion of our route that we were driving. The y-axis is each individual gas, different units and different scales. So just kind of keep that in mind. What the most important thing I want to draw people's attention to are these 3 peaks of ammonia. And I know it's a little tricky to read. This is 600 ppb spikes of ammonia. That's the highest I've seen at any gas concentrations that we've been mobile monitoring for in different states as well. So each peak represents a time we passed by an anaerobic digestion facility in Seaford, Delaware. So we kind of navigated around the streets around the facility. There's a neighborhood right there as well. And we have one of our monitors about a quarter mile away from this facility. So one of our participant homes is right on the fence line of this facility. I didn't get a chance to do a first presentation, but I would love to look at the PM on our particulate matter or stationary monitor and see what corresponds, if there's anything we see in particulate matter when we see these spikes in ammonia. Okay, so our next steps. There's a lot, but mostly the big one for air monitoring is getting that last modular set up, as well as coming up with a system of data tracking and data downloading and data analysis, especially for those modular units, and combining that with that trail camera data. That's going to require us going through and coding manually what we see. Okay, we see a truck, we put a 1. We see a poultry barn cleaning, we put a 2. So that's going to take some time and some development of making sure we do that properly. Additionally, we were going to continue to do these mobile monitoring trips for the gases, and we're hoping to do that seasonally and create a data set with that and be able to do some statistical analysis related to that. Additionally, I didn't really talk about it much today, but there's a lot more to be done with the swabs. On the lab side, we kind of have to evaluate the sensitivity and specificity of these poultry markers to make sure that they're specific to poultry and not picking up duck or goose or whatever other avian is in the area. And that's going to be done with known source samples, and kind of a plan for that's already been developed, as well as continue to collect these swabs and extract them and run our analysis on them. Oh, do we lose it? Nope, it's okay. And lastly, and most importantly, kind of working with our community partners, Mike and Maria, to figure out what is going to be the most effective way to communicate this back to communities. Do we want to give them readouts from their monitors? Do we want to create graphs and time series? Is it going to be a presentation? Is it going to be what is going to be the best way to communicate this and going to help them the most? And that is it. Thank you so much. I know we're going to do questions later, so you can ignore that, but thank you so much. Apologies
Hey,
for talk fast.
Thank you, Katie, for that great presentation. It looks kind of like a fun project. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Next, we have Kyle Morit. He's an assistant scientist from the Bloomberg School of Public Health. And Kyle, I've forgotten which department you're in. There it is, mental health. So please go ahead and introduce yourself and proceed with your presentation.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Marcia. And let's see, hopefully folks can see my slides here in the room. But my name's Kyle Morit. I'm an assistant scientist in the Department of Mental Health at Johns Hopkins. And I'm going to be talking today on our CHARM-funded pilot, looking at neighborhood walkability and lifestyle activity as promising pathways to improve cognitive health for Baltimore City older adults. So my research background is actually in lifestyle prevention and lifestyle factors related to Alzheimer's disease and cognitive impairments in later life. And there's been a lot of work done actually linking physical activity, cognitive activity, and social activity across the lifespan with reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. But oftentimes, a lot of this research ignores the social determinants of health that could drive an active lifestyle, including the built-in social environment that individuals live in. So this really set up for us the need to do this particular CHARMED project and to look at whether some of these factors may be related to activity specifically for older adults. And I just include some examples of these factors here, things like poor street infrastructure, lack of neighborhood amenities that can motivate activity. I just include some pictures here from 2 neighborhoods in Baltimore that vary pretty widely in these things. And then on the social side as well, things like social cohesion among neighbors, as well as safety concerns, like whether the area is high traffic or, potentially subject to crime. So, one sort of strategy to address some of these issues that's been done in the past that originated out of a partnership between Johns Hopkins and various community organizations, as well as the Baltimore City school system, was this program called Experience Corps. So this program placed older adult volunteers into various roles within local schools in their communities and neighborhoods. And one of the innovations of this was that it provided a safe environment for older adults to stay active in later life, as well as a generative reason to be active by being able to give back to students and help mentor students. And this program is still being run today in Baltimore and other cities as well through the AARP organization. And I included a map here of the original study where we were able to recruit individuals from a variety of neighborhoods throughout Baltimore, both in West and East Baltimore. So, and I just include a little bit here about the original trial, which was conducted back in 2006, where they actually found that this program was beneficial for a particular brain as well as activity outcomes. So one thing that was missing from this work is we didn't really have any information about what neighborhoods or different neighborhood measures from where these individuals were coming from. So we wanted to add those through this pilot and look at whether they were important for different outcomes, as well as the benefits of the intervention itself. So the main study aims here for this pilot are to examine whether neighborhood walkability and other neighborhood factors contributes to activity outcomes for these participants, as well as examine whether the Experience Corps intervention was potentially more beneficial for those coming from neighborhoods that may be less walkable. So I include this sort of as a figure form in this figure here. And then for the purposes of today, I just wanted to talk about some of our initial progress, specifically looking at this relationship between neighborhood walkability and socioeconomic disadvantage in some of our physical activity outcomes. So just to start here, the study design was a cross-sectional analysis of a nested cohort within the full Baltimore Experience Corps trial sample that had step activity monitoring data. So this was 180 individuals who had addresses that we could geocode, as well as complete data for some of the individual covariates we included in our models. The main outcomes were measured via ankle worn step activity monitor. So we looked at both the average daily number of steps, as well as separated by intensity. So low intensity, which is less than 100 steps per minute, and moderate to vigorous activity, more than 100, or at least 100 steps per minute. And one important part of this is we wanted to see whether it was really the neighborhoods driving this, or if they could also be explained potentially by individual level factors too, like demographics and health. So we did adjust for some of these factors in our statistical models. And then our statistical approach we used was linear regression of these step outcomes on some of these neighborhood measures, and then clustering standard errors on census tracts because multiple individuals were coming from the same neighborhoods. So the main environmental measures we're looking at in this study are two validated indice measures. The first is neighborhood walkability. This combines information about population density, access to bus and rail transit, street intersection density, and accessibility of destinations, things like retail, groceries, social destinations, things like that. And then we also have a measure of neighborhood socioeconomic disadvantage. So we have, this gets at things like proportion of the individuals in the census tract that are at poverty level, or the proportion of households receiving public assistance income. And for both of these measures, we developed these composite indices and then stratified them into three different groups: low, moderate, and high when we looked at them. So I included some maps here of the census tracts that we have participants for in the Experience Corps sample. just to show you what some of these measures look like. And you can see that, perhaps unsurprisingly on the left, a lot of the highly walkable areas in Baltimore tend to be the downtown, highly population dense areas. But interestingly, a lot of these areas also overlap with a lot of the areas that have higher social disadvantage as well, which are the dark orange tracks on the right. But you know, there's a definitely overlap, but not complete overlap. So moving into some of the descriptive findings for this study. The individuals included here are individuals that are at average age of 67, and they range from 60 to 83 years old at baseline. The sample was mostly women and predominantly identified as Black or African American, 91%. And then you can see from the average steps here that participants were pretty active. They had about 7,600 steps daily on average. And you can see most of this was attributed to low intensity activity. So the first row there. So our first sort of main finding so far from this was that our measure of neighborhood disadvantage, but not our measure of walkability, is associated with lower step activity in this sample. So in this plot here, I'm showing you the walkability and the disadvantage groups along the x-axis, and the blue bars are comparing the moderate level to the low level, and the orange bars are comparing the high level to the low level. And you can see that particularly for those in highly disadvantaged neighborhoods compared to the low disadvantaged neighborhoods, these individuals got about an average of 2,000 fewer steps daily than those in the low disadvantaged neighborhood. And further analyses showed that this was potentially driven by moderate to vigorous activity, with those in more disadvantaged neighborhoods tending to get 500 fewer moderate to vigorous steps per day. This was attenuated, but it may remain statistically significant after adjusting for individual demographic factors. And then it was attenuated further and no longer statistically significant after we adjusted for some individual health factors, which included depressive symptoms and a number of medical comorbidities in this case, or medical conditions, I should say. So the second thing we did was we also wanted to look at the combination of neighborhood disadvantage and walkability. So we did this by sort of splitting these measures in half using a median split and looking at whether individuals were neighborhoods that were low or high, or potentially both, in either neighborhood disadvantage or walkability. And you can see that these four groups I include on the bottom here, and there are some groups that are particularly low and uncommon. For example, the low walkability, high disadvantage group, those neighborhoods were only 8% of the sample. But we found that that group was actually particularly at risk in this case, and they had the lowest step activity count. So they're the gray bar here, and you can see that this group, compared to individuals coming from low walkability, low disadvantaged neighborhoods, tended to have 1,500 fewer steps. And this was driven primarily by the low intensity steps in this case. So I know I went kind of fast, but just to summarize briefly our current findings, we did find that our measure of neighborhood disadvantage was related to lower step activity for Baltimore, older residents of Baltimore that were included in this study. We found the greatest differences for moderate to vigorous activity, which we thought was important because a lot of the guidelines that are offered today are all in reference to at least moderate activity. So for example, the American College of Sports Medicine recommends older adults get at least 150 minutes per week of at least moderate activity. So even small changes and the significant changes we found here could be important. But it's also important to acknowledge that some of this could be driven by individual health too, because when we included these in the models, these did attenuate the relationships. So things like depressive symptoms and medical conditions. Although walkability itself wasn't related to our activity outcomes, we did find that the combination of living in a neighborhood that was both considered high disadvantage and also low walkability appeared to be the highest risk areas. So, we thought this was because these individuals could have both low geographic and low socioeconomic access to community resources that would encourage activity. And this could also be an important group to target with either the Experience Corps recruitment or interventions in general. So some of our future directions for this work are to incorporate additional measures, hopefully more predictive measures of walkability, things like traffic safety. We also have a small sample within this group that have GPS data as well, so we can look at, our individuals more active in specific regions. And then also, again, to evaluate, whether the Experience Corps intervention itself was potentially more beneficial for these different neighborhood groups. So I just wanted to end too by saying, we really want to make this information useful for our community partners. So, one idea we had is to potentially develop a dashboard of some of these measures to be publicly available and to hopefully be a useful tool for community advocates to lobby for policy change. It also is a way that could potentially enable the community to provide us feedback on what measures they'd like to see. And I included an example of a similar type of dashboard to the right here. And we also are in conversation with our community partners that still work with the Experience Corps program in Baltimore to see how to use this information to potentially prioritize recruitment for future work. So with that, I just wanted to acknowledge my study team and thank again the Charm Center for funding this work, and then finally the Experience Corps participants and our partners who without which this work would not be possible. So thank you so much, and I'll be happy to take questions during the question time, but thanks for listening.
Great. Thank you very much, Kyle. Look forward to the question and answer time to explore your results a little further. So last but not least by any measure is Lauren Deans, who's a PhD candidate in the environmental health program at the Bloomberg School. So Lauren, please introduce yourself and present your project for us.
Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Wills-Karp. Hi, everyone. I am Lauren Deans. I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate at the Bloomberg School of Public Health, and happy to discuss our CHARM pilot project today entitled Community Health Effects of Coal Dust, or CHECKed. So I'm going to start with a brief background and motivation for this particular work. I'm not totally sure where everyone is tuning in from, but I just wanted to kind of spatially orient everybody. This work is based in Baltimore, Maryland, which is on the East Coast of the United States. And then if we zoom into Baltimore, this is a map on the left of community statistical areas, which are kind of like neighborhood groups. And we've been working with our partners in Brooklyn, Curtis Bay, and I'll refer to that area as Curtis Bay for the rest of the presentation, and that's circled at the bottom of the slide. So before we get into the environmental exposures in this fence line community and talk a little bit more about coal dust, I wanted to briefly highlight some of the sociodemographics of Curtis Bay. So relative to Greater Roland Park, which is in the northern portion of the city, Curtis Bay has about 4 times as many Black residents, a median household income, about 25% of that found in Roland Park, a life expectancy about 13 years shorter, and a high school completion rate about 20% lower. So I present all of this just to highlight some of the sociodemographic differences between Curtis Bay and areas just miles away in the same city. So further, I wanted to add that there are about 70 sources of air pollution near Curtis Bay, and that's according to the Maryland Department of the Environment. Most of the air pollution sources in this area are industrial in nature, with primary pollutant emissions being nitrogen oxides, volatile organic compounds, and particulate matter. I also want to note that there hasn't been a regulatory air monitor in this neighborhood or area since about 2008. Additionally, kind of building on that, I wanted to highlight just a few major industrial events or disasters in the Curtis Bay area, and the list I'm about to show is by no means exhaustive. But I also want to note that some of these happened at facilities that are on the map, and some happened decades ago within the area, and might have happened at facilities that are no longer operating anymore. But first, I want to highlight the fact that there was, in 1920, there was a large oil spill and fire. In 1984, there was a major tank explosion. In 1996, there was a chemical company explosion, and in 2017, there was a chemical leak at another facility that resulted in a shelter in place. So again, I wanted to show all this to highlight just some of the industrial disasters that community members in Curtis Bay have been dealing with for decades. But I'm going to focus specifically on one particular facility today, and that is the CSX coal terminal. And that's noted in the map on the left and pictured on the right side of the screen. So brief background about the CSX coal terminal. It is operated by CSX, which is a major United States freight company. And it also had a major explosion that happened at that facility in late 2021 in December. And this is a picture of the aftermath of that explosion. So there was smoke rising above the facility, and coal dust was spread throughout the neighborhood of Curtis Bay. So much so that a resident actually could write on their car, "I survived the coal blast." That's what that says on the screen. And it was later determined that this explosion was caused by a buildup of methane in one of the tunnels at the facility. Another more recent incident related to the CSX terminal is that there was actually a train collision earlier this summer in June, resulting in a diesel fuel spill. So Curtis Bay residents say that they have had enough, considering the neighborhood's socio-demographic statistics combined with long-term exposure to nearby industrial facilities. This is clearly an issue of environmental injustice. So we've partnered with the South Baltimore Community Land Trust and the Community of Curtis Bay Association with the goal of collecting scientific evidence around industrial air pollution exposures and associated health impacts in the community, with a focus on the CSX coal terminal for this project. And that moves us into our specific aims for our Charmed pilot project. And the first aim is to estimate community exposures to air pollutants from the CSX coal terminal using a hyperlocal network of air monitors. And that's, again, to assess and characterize the air pollutant content around particulate matter of various sizes. We know that particulate matter can have respiratory and cardiovascular issues, so those are listed there. In addition, black carbon, which we can use as a marker for coal dust, and various gases we'd expect to be associated with other industrial facilities, such as carbon monoxide, nitric oxide, and nitrogen dioxide. Our second aim is to assess relationships between prospectively measured air pollutants and coal terminal neighbors' ratings of malodor, health, irritation, quality of life, and mood states. And our last aim is to support the South Baltimore Community Land Trust's efforts to adapt and replicate this pilot in similar communities facing similar concerns from living close to coal terminals or train lines that go to and from these terminals. But today I'm going to highlight some of the methods that we've employed and preliminary results from the first aim. So just to remind you, the first aim focused on assessing air pollution, and in order to assess air pollution in this community, we have to use air monitors. So currently we have two types of air monitors deployed in the Curtis Bay area and community. The first of which is the QuantIQ Modulaire and is pictured on the left side of the screen. And again, that measures particulate matter of various sizes from PM1 up to total suspended particles, which is approximately PM40. Modulars also measure various gases, in addition to other meteorological variables such as wind direction, wind speed, temperature, and relative humidity. We also have deployed something called a DS-Tech Observair, which measures black carbon, unlike the Modulaire. And again, that's helpful in terms of distinguishing dark or coal dust from other particulate matter. Additionally, we also have trail cameras deployed in Curtis Bay, and those are stationed in the community and facing the coal terminal, so we can have a better understanding of activity patterns at the coal terminal. So one of our lab members actually watches time lapses from these videos and codes activities at the 1 minute level, 0 or 1. So they would code a 1 if for the presence of bulldozer, crane, or train activity at the terminal, for example. So using these tools, we started building the Curtis Bay Community Air Monitoring Network in spring 2022. And our community partners at the South Baltimore Community Land Trust and Community of Curtis Bay Association worked with local businesses and residents to place these monitors. And at this point, we have monitors at about 10 different locations around the community. I also want to note on this map that the terminal is labeled as CSX. So the orange dots indicate places where we have both modulars and observers. So we have this full sort of spectrum and understanding of particulate matter and black carbon, where those orange dots are. Where the red dots are, we have only modulars, so still an understanding of particulate matter. And also I have those, have noted tiny trail cameras where we have our cameras deployed. So there's one just northwest of the terminal and one further west of the terminal in the community, and that's located here. So today I'll be highlighting just some preliminary results focused on location 1, which I pointed out on the slide. And that's because that particular location has had some of the highest PM10, total suspended particle, and black carbon concentrations over our study period. And we expect those to be a marker for coal. And I won't be highlighting any camera data today in the interest of time. So using that air quality data, we can use a statistical technique to essentially break that data into groups of pollutants or factors. And we do that using something called non-negative matrix factorization. And we pull into that tool these pollutants. So again, PM of various size ranges, PM1 up to PM40, in addition to black carbon, carbon monoxide, nitric oxide, and nitrogen dioxide. But essentially, for a putative coal dust factor or signature, we're looking for a collection of PM10, total suspended particles, and black carbon. So now I'll highlight some of the preliminary results from this first aim. I'm going to walk through the 5 factors that our statistical tool NMF helped generated for us from our data. So the factor is located on the x-axis, and each pollutant's contribution to each factor is located on the y-axis. And finally, the pollutants that were considered are noted by the colors and listed at the top. So the first factor that we've labeled is what we've labeled as FAR diesel, and that's because it has a high contribution from nitrogen dioxide, which is noted there in pink. This is called FAR diesel because we would expect that this would be a result of diesel combustion coming from another neighborhood. So it's a little more FAR. It's a FAR diesel in that instance. The second factor that we've denoted is something we call this CARS because of the high contributions from carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is emitted from combustion. The third factor that we labeled is regional because of the high contributions from smaller particulate matter, such as PM1 and PM2.5. So we expect those smaller particles to be able to travel from outside the Curtis Bay area and then into the community. And then skipping over to the fifth factor, we've labeled this as near diesel because of the high contributions from NO. So those are going to be directly emitted from diesel combustion. That's what NO is going to do. And then finally, I want to draw your attention to the putative coal dust factor, which I've boxed there. And that's because of the high contributions from PM10, total suspended particles, and black carbon. So we can take that putative coal dust factor and look at how it varies over time. So that's what this is, a time series of how that factor varied over time at location 1 during our time period. The data is on the x-axis and the value of the factor is on the y-axis. We've also set a couple of thresholds, as you'll see here. So we've set the mean plus 3 standard deviations and the mean. The mean plus 3 standard deviations is exceeded about 1.5% of the time, while the mean is exceeded about 32% of the time. I also wanted to point out that we can use this as a tool to kind of look for coal dust events that we've discussed or observed with the Maryland Department of the Environment. So in these instances on February 6th and 16th, those were points where we had noted that we saw high TSP or total suspended particles, PM10, and black carbon. So next I wanted to highlight some of our next steps for aims 2 and 3, which involve a panel study. So we plan to recruit participants for a health panel study in the Curtis Bay area. And that's because the World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. We really want to understand how living so close to a coal terminal impacts health and health-related quality of life. So I've also listed a couple of quotes here from Curtis Bay residents. The first one saying, "Since I moved here, my breathing's gotten worse." And the next quote saying, "The kids run around and they have sweat coming down their face and it's just big giant beads of black dust just everywhere." This is a picture of a Curtis Bay resident's hands. You see dark dust on it, and that's after they wiped the mailbox outside of their home. So talking a little bit more about this health panel study, we're planning to recruit from an area in South Baltimore, including Curtis Bay. So Curtis Bay is here, and here's the industrial area. And also on this map, you see a red line that indicates the rail line that originates at the CSX coal terminal and then follows through the neighborhoods and goes up to Mount Winans. And I just want to note that this train line actually goes far past Mount Winans and into Morrell Park and to other parts in the region. But we're planning to recruit from this particular area. So our goal is to have 3 study waves for 2 weeks each, and in each of those waves, we would recruit 20 different participants. And in order to assess exposure, we would collect PM 2.5, PM 10, and black carbon data at participants' homes. We would deploy the monitors that I showed earlier in the presentation. And for outcomes, we would have participants fill out twice daily diaries for their 2-week study period, where they would document acute health symptoms such as coughing, sneezing, or throat irritation. They would also document their moods, and they would also indicate if they had changed any of their daily habits based on what they've observed or smelled outside. In addition, another outcome that we're planning to assess is how coal dust has accumulated on the side of each of our participants' homes. So some of the next steps for this panel study are to submit an IRB application. I know that that's been mentioned in earlier presentations today, and to also begin recruitment, hopefully towards the end of this year. So finally, I just wanted to highlight the many people who have contributed their time and efforts to this ongoing work, starting with our community partners here, the Community Curtis Bay Association, the South Baltimore Community Land Trust, and the SB7 Coalition. I also want to recognize my advisor, Chris Heaney, and also the Charm Center and other funding. So looking forward to taking your questions. Thanks for listening.
Great. Thank you, Lauren, and to all the speakers. Amazing projects and amazing progress. So I'd like to first ask if there's anybody in the room, if they'd like to ask a question. And then once we're finished with those, we'll throw them back to the panelists themselves, because I think that you probably haven't heard each other's projects before, and an opportunity to kind of gain some insight from your fellow awardees. So anyone in the room have a question? I can't see the room, so somebody help me.
I got you. That's me.
Are
there any questions? I think you might have to come up. Yeah, I'm not sure what your name is, but if you either that microphone or this one, you can try that one first.
And tell us who you are and which speaker you'd like to ask question for.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Carpenter, and I'm from the New River Valley in Virginia. I work on ending open burning and also ensuring that we get safer, more modern technology in place of open burning. My question, I think it was for the first panelist, Sarah, potentially, but also anyone is more than welcome to answer the question. I was just wondering if anyone had any, if anyone was aware of any resources, trainings, or toolkits for grassroots organizations who are looking to start doing some community health surveying and canvassing. Because one thing I notice is that, you know, we're on the ground, we're trying to do all this work, but we don't have the same access to research and those types of methodologies. So I was wondering, are you aware of any toolkits or trainings?
Sarah, do you want to answer that? But I can also answer as well. Go ahead first.
Sure. I mean, I can say we haven't really been using any toolkits. We've really been just leveraging the resources that we have through the Charm Center and our faculty expertise to tailor something specific to community. I mean, I think that's kind of the most important thing here. But I'll let Marcia speak to other toolkits. We haven't used any specific toolkits, but.
So I think the purpose of the Charm Center, and tomorrow we'll speak about other aspects of it. So if you have an opportunity, it'd be great to see you there at that session. But we have several parts of Charm that is involved in helping refine and design studies on the ground with community partners and other stakeholders. I'm happy to speak with you directly at some point. Since I don't have my slide, I don't have the contact information
I can pass it along.
up there.
But Chris just put it on the.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I can get
can
her
they
contact
see
information
the-
as well and pass it along because I know we
Great.
don't really have access to the chat at the moment. So I can facilitate that for sure.
Okay, that would be wonderful. Thank you. So we'd love to talk to you, and perhaps you might want to submit a Charm proposal, and we could help you in designing and providing the expertise for collection of data. So thank you for that question.
And I'll just say that add on to that, there's a great effort that the BU School of Public Health put together with community residents who have been facing environmental contamination, well water contamination, and we're asking that question: does my community need a health study? How would I design one? Who would I reach out to? And we in the Charmed Center have a lot of people who could help with that and know those resources, like the ones that we can get to you, which is a little bit of a public facing, and they tried to make it understandable and approachable for any member of the public to be able to take a crack at it.
And I believe, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but you're in the catchment area, no? So we could.
Sure,
work
we
with
would be,
provide.
we are not really rigid in our catchment area, to be honest. In one of our first community meetings, we had people from North Carolina that attended in person. So we focused pretty much on Maryland, but, we're willing to work with other groups for sure. So please contact us, and we're happy to either assist you directly or point you to others who might be able to help you.
We also have another question in the room. So
Okay.
Hi, thanks for everybody's presentation. My name is Mindy DePaula. I'm with Environmental Defense Fund. I work specifically there on air quality and environmental justice projects. My question is mostly, I think, for Sarah, but yeah, open to whoever wants to answer. I went to Bloomberg, so I think we all know that Hopkins doesn't have a perfect track record when it comes to working with local neighbors and community groups. And so I think, Sarah, you mentioned that communities express the need for local data. And so kind of a twofold or specific question with a broader question attached to it is, did they express the need before or after your project started? And if it was after, how did you build that relationship to begin with, knowing the history and context of Baltimore? Thanks.
Sure. No, that's a great question, and it's something that I think anyone who works at Hopkins kind of has to deal with, and it's something that we're all very conscious of. And so the Hopkins relationship with this community actually predates even my involvement with this work. I actually think Anna in the room was probably even there from the beginning, but I actually can't speak to exactly how the relationship started, but it actually started with a collaboration between some other faculty members and the community doing some air monitoring of hazardous air pollutants, and giving the community data. And I mean, honestly, in terms of how we build that trust, it's just by showing up to community events, being there in person as much as we can. Like I said, our team is really embracing an approach where our community residents and our co-investigators, and we meet, weekly on Zoom, and just show up and do the work together and figure things out together. And that's kind of been the work for us. Along those lines, I think one thing we've realized is, we can't bring absolutely everybody to the table, and there are some groups and some individuals who, aren't interested in working with an organization like Hopkins, and that's okay, but we can still, work and do, do engagement with people who want to work with us and help as much as we can. So.
And Anna, did you want to say a little more about the history of that study?
Well, that study in particular, I think is a little more complicated because I think it's through Pete when he was at but I can say that within Hopkins, it's such a big beast. So there definitely are some investigators that unfortunately have left communities, high and dry without giving any information back. But here present, Dr. Chris Heaney and I have been trying our best to be present with the communities, follow them, be with them. So my involvement with the community of Turner Station goes back 10 years. Chris, I think, has been working for 7 or 8 years in Curtis Bay. So by being and staying present is the only way that we're going to be able to kind of like start making little steps towards making that perception that Hopkins just comes and gets things out of us a little better. But it's a complicated road, but we're trying.
Yeah. So it actually was, that relationship was the main driver for the creation of this center. To have something that will last over time and that we will continue to build the relationship with the community, and we won't be a flash in the pan. We don't intend to go anywhere. We continue to have this center funded and be able to work with the community and show them that we're genuinely interested. The other part of it is we are not coming to them with research questions. The goal of this center is to get the research questions and the goals from the community directly. And then we try to bring our expertise. So it's a little bit different than the approach that's been taken at Hopkins and in Baltimore in the past. And Chris, you may want to add to that.
Yeah, and I think similar to what Sarah, Anna, and Marcia said, and that idea behind Charmed and these pilot grants is that we want to be that technical expertise that can be responsive to this community question about environmental conditions and their potential impact on health, that have been, maybe they've been brewing for a long time, decades, and maybe it's just been the case that the structural components around those neighborhoods have not produced a lot of experts who want to come and answer those questions about, is that facility adversely affecting my neighborhood environment or health? So, and there's a lot of structural forces behind that. So we're trying to have Charm be getting the technical expertise we have among the members and the faculty and the students and the trainees to help out. So, if you're interested in teaming up with us, meeting, talking more, we would be more than happy to. I think I remember you saying from EDF. So yeah, that would be one group that we'd love to talk more with. I don't know that we've had them at the Environmental Justice Partnerships Board, for example, but that's one monthly venue where Charmed sets a table, and it's not at Hopkins. It's by invitation to communities where we want those issues to have that energy and capacity built around them.
Mm-hmm. And if you're interested in further work that we're doing, we do have a session tomorrow afternoon that'll give you a little bit more detail about what Charmed is and some of the examples of other work that we're doing outside of the pilots. So thank you for that question and the opportunity to provide that information. Is there anyone else in the room that has a question?
Yeah, I think we have one more.
Okay.
Hello. My name is Anthony David Jr. I am a recent graduate of Harrisburg University of Science and Technology, and I'm currently an Environmental Justice Board member for the Department of Environmental Protection. So, of course, my question is for Sarah. Well, not really a question, it's more so a comment, and also like to really talk about like my experience, especially working in this space in the state of Pennsylvania, or like kind of just in the space in general, especially with the health like component of it. So with my undergraduate research, I was focusing on the urban heat island effect as it relates to redlining policy, and I wanted to incorporate that health aspect. The biggest problem with that is the health data isn't readily available. Some of the health data that is available isn't really at the block group level, so it's really hard to understand the legacy pollutions that are really ingrained within these communities, especially in a city like Harrisburg, where you have illegal dumping that is occurring, where you have the 3 Mile Island waste facility that was happening that recently, or that didn't recently get just shut down, but it got shut down a couple of years ago. And for you, Sarah, at DEP, their energy program office actually just did a kind of similar study that you are doing right now. That was kind of facilitated under Sarah Pinter, and they had this, had the survey going on, and we hosted the community meetings across the Pennsylvania area, so I was able to attend the Harrisburg area community meeting. So I would love to connect you all to kind of to compare notes of what you all have or will find, and what Sarah Pinter has found through her research as well, to kind of amplify what's going on in the Pennsylvania area. And I would love for you to come talk to our environmental justice board at DEP as well, so I could definitely try to connect with you to that. And yeah, I just love all the work that you all are doing, again, especially with the health component as well, because I feel like that's like the biggest piece that is missing from environmental justice. It's hard to, we have all this funding available, readily available, we have all the grants and opportunities and stuff like that, that these bigger organizations are, have access to, but, there's no information that's supporting the reasoning why they should have it. There's no information, scientific evidence of why these organizations deserve the money and grants opportunities that they're having, especially since they're not actively participating and incorporating these communities. So I would love to see Johns Hopkins to really take the lead on that health aspect of environmental justice, and even in the scientific community, making sure that not only is this health information is available, but it's also integratable within all types of technological platforms, especially within GIS as well.
Mhm. Thank you. I don't know if you can see the chat, but perhaps Katie can share some contact information with you.
We just had a visit from the organizers, and we are at time, unfortunately. And I think we do need to
Okay.
wrap up because of the plenary, but I just wanted to give you a heads up.
All right. Well,
Yeah, I'll just say I just put my email in the chat. I'm not sure if Anthony was able to see it, but I'd love to connect. If you want to send me an email, that would be wonderful. It's sloopolt1@JHU. Thanks.
and again, if you are able to attend the session tomorrow that we have, and we have several sessions tomorrow and Saturday, please look in the program and come and hear more about some of the projects we're doing. And then hopefully we can connect more directly. So thank you to all of our speakers for excellent presentations. I'm really excited about the progress that's being made, and I congratulate all of you. And thank you to the audience for your patience with the tech issues, and enjoy the rest of the symposium. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.